Russians, such happy and optimistic people. Modern Russia stands to be one of the most powerful countries in the world. After the fall of the Soviet Union, after the long-standing Cold War, Russia has been building back their military power to assert dominance within the confines of their geographical position. And the tension in the country is in a delicate moment with the geopolitical interventions and sociocultural problems that surround our lovely teddy boy. Beyond that, Russia and the Slav countries stand as the worst countries in Western civilization. The political background is there, but what are the problems that cause Russia to have one of the highest suicide rates and highest drug issues and overall be one of the most depressing countries in the world? As much as you may know, temperatures in Russia are cold, really cold, cold to the bone, cold to the point where your balls are wrinkled, like that granny in that Mexican movie. Yeah, really cold. Of course, this depends on the location of the city since Russia is the biggest country in the world. But some of the coldest cities are located in Russia, and if your wishy-washy is Rujos in Moscow, imagine it in Vladivostok. They probably fall out of your legs. To withstand those conditions, you would at least like to have some beauty in the landscape to justify your existence in that space, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Having to look all of those great buildings should be depressing itself, but then the sun has to punish the country more and have an unstable sun-to-moon ratio. Various studies show the downs and benefits of the weather, and Russia doesn't seem to be getting a break at all. Add to all of that the PTSD that Russians have to deal after a lot of the terror they suffered in various wars that changed the 20th century and that still changed the country. If veteran warriors are a problem in the US, imagine it how it goes for the Bolsheviks, who are obligated to enter into the military in order to become a man. No wonder why there's such a drug epidemic all over the world. No wonder why the sky is shattered by our own inner reflection. How can we justify our existence in this blip of time and space? Is there anything worthwhile to do in this reductionist materialist era? Where is our divine merciful creator, and why it has abandoned us? Is something there for us to do? To make the sky blue again? Why are we in this place? Why is Mother Russia bleeding the tears of the forgotten? What have we done to let you drain like that? Yeah, now I'm sure a lot of you have heard or seen in some graffiti this famous phrase, God is dead. Maybe you've already been conscious of the knowledge that led to this event, but before going into the next point, let me deepen in this concept and why Russia became one of the most affected countries of this catastrophe. Friedrich Nietzsche, famous existentialist philosopher, quoted in The Gay Science, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was the holiest and mightiest of all the world has yet owned, has bled under our nips? Who will wipe this blood of us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? Well, what does he mean by that? By the first impression we can say that Nietzsche wasn't saying this in a celebratory way. So whenever you see a 14-year-old atheist saying this, kick them out by doing this. Thank you. Now that our path is clear, let me explain you the reason why Nietzsche made this statement. After the Renaissance, man started to base its knowledge on scientific rationality, with discoveries like the heliocentric system and the evolutionary theory of Charles Darwin. And with the discovery of 19th century scientists, we discovered that we were made by cells, not by an all-too-powerful creator. This fundamental change made Western society follow a more materialistic perception of the world and eradicated God as the center of all questioning. Why were we made? Well, God created us to serve a higher purpose. Where did we come from? Well, God created everything in the world like ants, plants, mountains, animals, and humans as his maximum creation. A lot of that was eradicated, and Russia was the most affected country to suffer the consequences of this catastrophe. Why? Well, because natural order. If a country is not as developed, the consequences of the world would amplify on those who didn't have the luck to be as advanced. The people of Russia weren't lucky. The Industrial Revolution was barely coming and their citizens still had a metaphysical and spiritual perception of the world. So if nihilism was gonna come like a wave of meaninglessness, Russia was expecting a tsunami to break all of their belief system. But it wasn't all bad news. After all, there's a difference between what people say and what the system does. The powers that be had all the moral power on religion. Why are you a rebel pleasant? Don't you know that God is watching you? Imagine what would he think of you. You might not see him if you keep acting like that. Religion at the time wasn't much of a myth as much as a moral power that kept the proletariat as sheep, fearing the cold stare of the benevolent Lord, making them blind to their oppression. That's what Marx referred to by saying, religion is the opium of the masses. After all of this, Marx came in. Resentful German bourgeoisie boy was walking perfectly with pathology of the Russian people who had reasons to rectify Christianity and the change that it created them. Russia was one of the least developed countries of Europe, so everything was worse. Working conditions, wages, and the resentment against the Romanovs that started way before the 20th century. Movements like Land and Liberty or the Narodkins were advocating for the people to free themselves for the change that this new era was creating. Because things barely changed. The bourgeoisie were buying serfs like slaves, and the Narodkins weren't happy about that. They thought that they could bypass the face of capitalism. In the novel, What is to be Done, Russian intellectual Nikolai talks of a woman who escapes the control of her family and an arranged marriage to seek economic independence throughout the creation of small cooperatives, communes, and a duty of the intellectuals to educate the masses with the idea that Russia can bypass capitalism. Lenin really liked it, and it also inspired the revolution and its intellectuals by getting them all high with rainbows and sunflowers. They said that if you want to see what a society feels, look at their artists and what they're portraying to find an answer. And Russia seemed to be all over the place. What is to be done was a response to Father and Son, a response of the nihilistic thought happening in the institutions of Russia. And Notes from the Underground was a response to Nikolai's novel, mocking the idea of the utopia fulfilled with materialistic needs. Like, there was a beef battle going on between these boys. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Russian literature was on another level in the 19th century. Everything was playing smoothly, with a lot of the consequences of the scientific revolution that led to Europe caring about materialistic needs. While Dostoevsky was playing the drama, Nietzsche was giving it the philosophical thought. While the West was destroying their own beliefs, Marx came in and tried to replace it with an ideological perspective. When the First World War ended, Russia was in worse situations because poorly performance, everything created a soup of chaos that led to the proletariat affiliating with radical liberal parties that called for the people to arm themselves against the government. And if you have miserable working conditions, overpriced food compared to your wage, and a lack of assistance by the government, you have no choice but to go to strike. This pathology can be detected within every country that suffered a communist revolution. America could have been a part of that after the Great Depression. And well, it happened what it happened. A lot of this with the objective to replace religion with ideology, something that Marx played a big part of, with some hits and lots of myths. Marx not only despised religion, but he also saw it as a barrier to start the revolution. The abolition to religion, as the illusory happiness of the people, is the demand for the real happiness. To call on them to give up their illusions about their conditions is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusions. So, real happiness is achieved by materialistic needs? That sounds very capitalist, to be honest. I mean, I know what he means, but does breeze, bread, and land can be fulfilling to us irrational creatures? No. Man is not a key, as we said. We certainly need material stability, but what about meaning? What about the main justification of existence from that poor serf that can't do much to expand his strength against the system? That's what Marx forgot about. The main bread that people can live without, in the most naive way possible. Once workers finally overthrow capitalism, unequal social relations will no longer need legitimating and people's alienation will dissolve, along with any need of religion. And as the Russians grew resentment toward religion, their faith to their morals as well. Nietzsche recognized that this death also implied the elimination of morality. When one gives up Christian faith, one pulls the right to Christian morality out from under one's feet. This morality is by no means self-evident. When there's no ups and downs, There's just no path. This is one of the reasons why the USSR was so catastrophic, and the dictators did nothing but make it worse. After the establishment of the USSR, both Lenin and Stalin had the goal to eradicate religion to establish scientific atheism as their main ideology, which can be good in some sense, but if it was just to replace religion for ideology, things were gonna go that great, and they didn't. Fair enough, the Bolsheviks had resentment toward religion because of the Tsar families that were tightly aligned with orthodoxy, and this became an excuse to suppress, oppress, and sometimes kill people with religious beliefs, destroying all their heritage throughout the destruction of churches, freedom of expression, and an implementation of cultural Marxism that pretended to put all their faith in scientific ends. Sounds fair, but what does religion have to do with Job or Ecclesiastes and Proverbs? Christians were tough. After a lot of oppression, 35% of people were still Christian, and after the fall of the USSR, this number amplified to more than half of the population. On the other hand, after World War II, Russia was fighting the ideological battle with the US, and the world was a playground for it. Sometimes they used to put pawns in the countries, and sometimes they just gave them the toys to play out peacefully. Every action they used, take it, the Soviets rejected. Why are they emotional? Let's act all monotone to show them real manners. Why they treat women like shit when we can give them more equity? Well, some reactions were better than what the US was doing, but it mostly led to Russians being serious and grey like their sky, and maybe it had to do with the climate too, but the Slavs weren't lucky. A lot of this, the death of God, the replacement of religion for ideology, led to Russia's struggle with existential nihilism. Why not use opium instead of religion to relieve all of our pain? Or alcohol? Or maybe art? It doesn't have to be as deep, but as long as it's fulfilling, we can try to become the Ubermensch and go over the spiritual trauma of the 20th century. And really, looking at the random videos I see in the internet, this form of nihilism extends to a lot of entertainment. I guess it's just hard to have fun in the cold forest. So thank you guys for watching, hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, all of that. If you're Russian, let me know if I did something wrong, if I have a fact mistaken. And in the next video I want to talk deeper on the topic of the death of God, so stay tuned.